is the Warrior ethos, coaching and therapy. This is Warrior Leadership. This is Warrior Leadership. And I'm here with my boy DB. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good. Good morning, man. I hope everything is going well with you.
Well, you know, better above than below, so I'm here. We're doing Warrior Leadership. I'm ready to rock this shit out, man. And today, it's a great topic. I mean, we introduced it yesterday in a live stream. Not everyone saw that, and that's okay. But they're really going to get into it today because we're going to talk about time management, and we're going to have an entire series on time management. And to start it off, we're gonna discuss why people make excuses and say things like I don't have time and stuff like that. But we're not just gonna talk about why they make excuses. We're gonna talk about how that's just another level of fear, which is false evidence appearing real. So, but before that, I'm going to say that this is season 3, episode 1 for Warrior Leadership. And we've had a journey that has started all the way back in, what was that, late 2022?
Yep.
And it's just gotten better and better and better over time. I'm happy I'm here with you.
That's it, man. I'm happy to be here too, man, and happy to really dig into this topic of time management. And so I thought I started off by, you ever heard the saying, time flies when you're having fun?
Yeah, but it's not always when you're having fun.
Okay, so I wrote something down that I think is interesting. I think it really gets us going in the direction that we need to go in, which is some people say time flies when you're having fun, but if you're not grounded and always flying, you'll never get to your final destination.
That's true, and you know, if we're bringing up cool things like that, you know, that's why they have for kids. I mean, they teach time management at such an early age, and you know, when you're stuck in the race, it's almost like the tortoise and the hare. You know, who won that race?
The tortoise did, of course.
The tortoise did, of course. And anyone who's an athlete knows that it's probably because the rabbit wore himself out. I don't remember the whole story, but I do know the tortoise won the race. And the one thing that I learned from that is that, you know, if you always go, first of all, how are you measuring anything to figure out if you're actually getting where you need to be? And second of all, you know, when are you taking any time for you? And I know that was the biggest thing that you wanted to mention today is, you know, when you're going like that, there is definitely a fear of burnout. And although this is the age of hustle in society, that if you actually get caught up in that and you're not taking any time for you, whatever it is you're hustling for, you know, we joked around in our first season and we used the example of 50 Cent where you get rich or you die trying, and you know, all those other things that people say that, you know, that kind of encourages that hustle. If you live that way, you're going to give up on your hustle because you're not going to be able to sustain it.
Yeah, that, you know what, that's a fact. And I can honestly say that when people, and I think that may go into our like major sort of barrier here, which is that we're addressing the culture that says I'm too busy, or I have, you know, I'm overworked, under stress, that idea. And I think we're going in that. And so it's interesting because when you really want to do something, coach, you will put time, energy, and effort into it, blood, sweat, and tears, and you'll get that accomplished because it's important to you and you want to get it done. And so for me, I think that from a counseling standpoint and what I've seen in practice with people, and then even what I've observed in my own life, is that when people say they're too busy, they may be trying to protect themselves from like unwanted stress, that pressure of putting the stress on. And I think in doing that, though, they could be missing opportunities to actually grow. I mean, because we grow in a place of discomfort. And so, although, and I agree with everything you said earlier about, measuring and, getting rest, but I can't measure and get rest if I'm not doing anything. And I think people are comfortable with their same routine, right? Just kind of doing the same thing, being able to kind of control the day. And so when you come up and you say, hey, who wants to do a process improvement project? Nobody wants to raise their hand, but yet they're always complaining about the process. So,
well, and you know what? The other reason they don't raise their hand is because how often do they not have a process at all? And so they're not going to raise their hand because they're not going to be the one who stands up and has to share what they're already doing and say, well, I'm not really measuring anything at all, or I have no process at all. And that's what the hustle culture breeds is even though it's important to not get stuck in analysis paralysis, you do have to have a plan. And so starting off with a process and an initial plan is extremely important. Now, from a time management perspective, the first thing you need to figure out once you start taking that action is what your battle rhythm is going to be. And taking a break once every week, couple weeks, month, quarter, whatever, to analyze what's working and what's not. And if you're just hustling, of course you're not going to have any time. But what's important? If you don't know, if you can't answer that question, then you're wasting your time. And you should have all this stuff built in. If you're a manager, if you're a leader of any kind, you should understand where the extra time is in your day so that you can fit things in. And when you have to take time away from one thing to give it to another, you need to know where to go back to. And if you're just hustling constantly, for one, you're not providing a good example for your people. You're not taking care of yourself. And there are just so many things that you're not doing right in that process. So there's always time, but you got to find it. And if you don't have time, why don't you have time? Are you just hustling and not doing anything productive? Or, I mean, you got to figure out why you don't have time, because you got to have time for stuff. And Dave Underwood turned in. Hi, Dave. Thank you for coming in. Global recruiter for John Deere. And you know what? I know you. I see you over at the veteran events over in the Quad Cities. So thank you for tuning in this morning, Dave. Feel free to ask questions, interject ideas. There's so much to be said about time management, and this is just the first call. So, Derek, what do you think about those things?
So I like one thing that you said that stuck out to me is this idea of the hustle culture, in a sense, discouraging this idea of processing and doing an after actions review. It just and I think that's it. When you think about that, it then opens us up to say we're talking about time management, but then also I think that's going to be at some point a follow-up series, and maybe we've discussed this a lot, is thinking about changing culture and change management. And so it makes me look at this idea of time management and change management kind of going hand in hand with each other, right? So like you have to like almost simultaneously be doing strategies to improve your time management, but also you have to be considering the realities of the culture that you're working within. I know that I'll give you an example of this. Like we're working on a process improvement right now at the hospital, and the group was kind of resistant to bring in like the system redesign framework and all that stuff to be able to actually challenge the process. And, you know, that's what I was recommending when I first came in. And I, instead of being, you know, one track mind and thinking that my way was the only way, the group was like, well, we want to try to work through this and figure out our problem on our own before we get them involved and it gets too convoluted. And so we met somewhere in the middle on that. But I think that when we talk about this idea of just you know, time management and change management coming together, you know, it's understanding where the organization is on that process of change, meaning they already in the contemplation and the action stage, and so we're in a good space, and so we don't want to mess that up and then move backwards. So I think the people who we're focusing on, our organizations we're focusing on today more so, is when they're in that stage of change of pre-contemplation, where there's no movement, where they know they need to change, they know that the processes need to improve so that way they can have better output, but there's no action behind it. Not even, and action is also, when you think of contemplation, that's actually an action because you're thinking about a plan and then you're moving closer towards execution. But if you're staying on the pre-contemplation and you're not moving, then there's no progress. And so I think for me as a leader, I'm an activator. That's one of my strengths, meaning I jump in head first into the swimming pool and I figure out the temperature later. And so I noticed is that most people are not that way, unfortunately. Some people, they want to stick their toe in there. And then while you're jumping in the water, even though they know you didn't freeze inside the water, they still won't jump in. And so as a leader, it's just interesting, like how to motivate people in terms of this. And so, Coach, I'm going to ask you that because I think you can shed some light on like motivating people in that process of, you know, that process of change and being able to get them going back and still sticking with time management. But if they're in their mind, I guess what I'm saying is that if they're not ready to change, then that's going to lead to procrastination. And that time management thing that we're talking about is going to go out the window because they're going to go and do an activity that's less challenging, less difficult, because they don't want to jump in that water. So I just what are your thoughts on that?
So the question that you're asking is going to dip into next week's topic, but I'll give a sneak peek.
Okay.
Or not next week, but in 2 weeks. Okay. And that's the difference between discipline and motivation. So whether or not you have to take action at all. And so to briefly say motivation, let me ask you a question. When something is hard, how often are you motivated to do it?
Not often.
So, but you know what? What we learn in the military is that you have to embrace the suck.
Yeah.
But you have to get people's buy-in. And you know what? Actually, Dave Underwood just got done mentioning this. Fully agree with Derek. The people have to see the benefits of change. But to get to your point, that's the activator. You know, why are we making this change? We need to figure that out together, have a conversation, and if you know it has to happen, you've already made the decision that change has to happen, and you want to improve your processes, you have to come up with a strong why, and it can't be what benefits you. It needs to be what benefits the organization and what benefits each of the people within that organization. So you need to come up with a collective vision that benefits everybody, so that when you're briefing that, it gives them a strong, I guess, an initial motivator. But if people are really going to do it, I mean, you got to stick to your guns as a leader, man, because if they can make all the excuses that they want to, but at the end of the day, sometimes that action needs to be pushed. So
I like that.
A deadline, you know,
yeah.
Okay, everybody wants to find what's going on in their lane, and before we start taking action on this, let's take a week or so. Let's put the that action list together of things that you'd like to move forward with. We'll come together. We're going to have a meeting to discuss it, and then we're going to build a timeline and figure out how we can improve everybody's processes together. If you don't do it systematically, it's not going to happen. And if you don't set a deadline, it's never going to happen, because people will hem-haw around the idea, because no one likes to change. Everyone says that change is important. Everyone says that change is what makes an organization stronger, more adaptable, the whole 9 yards. But then you also hear the phrase that we've been doing this for a long time. Why would we change it now? And so the dichotomy there is that if they don't change, nothing's ever going to get better. But then the change is going to be uncomfortable. So leaning into that and making it happen rather than just saying we got to do this. I mean, actually setting firm deadlines in that process and then figuring out how that's going to work. I mean, if you're going to get somebody else involved, okay, let's take another week or two and let's come up with this stuff. We'll bring the people in. We'll make a plan, set a timeline. There will be deadlines to get this stuff done, and we're going to do this together. Everyone's going to be uncomfortable. Everyone's going to get through this. Let's go. And when you do it that way, it lets them know that they're not alone. It lets them know that everyone gets their own ownership in the process before you bring in an outside consultant. And then everyone knows that once that consultant comes in, it helps them develop a plan, that they're still going to have their piece in all of that, so that they're going to take ownership and action once that plan is created. But you as the leader, especially if you're the one who is going to be the one facilitating that change, there has to be strict deadlines. Otherwise, people will make excuses all day long, because I don't like to change. You don't like to change. As much as we talk about change being important, nobody likes to freaking do it. So that's what I have to say in response to your comment. Now, I will say that Dave asked another important question before that I think we should address, because everybody's talking about it. Do you see value in adding AI to your work process to assist with time management? So, Dave, what I will say to this, and Derek, I'll let you put your comment on here, because I want to know, since you're at the VA right now, what your perspective is on this and what kind of conversations have been had. But for me as a business owner, I see AI as a tool. It is not a one-stop shop solution. There still has to be, in an organization, there still has to be interpersonal conversations happening to make sure that whatever AI comes up with when you ask it questions, that it's a good solution for everyone. And in addition to that, AI is what AI is. So if you don't ask it the right questions, then you're only going to get the answers to your questions. It's not going to get any more than that. So if your questions are garbage, then your solutions that AI gives you will also be garbage. So before you just say AI is this great and wonderful tool, you have to learn the art of prompt engineering, so that you can make that process work for you and your organization. So AI is a wonderful tool. It does work well. It's an idea generation tool that can get you out of a stuck situation. Is it the know-all, be-all? I mean, is it the judge, jury, and execute? It is not. I would say that it is a tool just like everything else. It's like a consultant that you would bring in that does not probably have all the answers. That plan still has to be put together with the team. Everything else, AI is the same way. It gives you solutions and ways to move forward, but you still have to do the work. And I hope that answered your question. What do you think about that, Derek?
Yeah, I love this discussion, actually, that it went in this direction. Interesting. As far as the time management tool, I think the depths of that question is beyond just our workflow. I mean, does it improve with time management in my life? Yeah, and everything that I do, it can. but it also can be a slippery slope. And so I'm not gonna, obviously I'm not in my official capacity right now at VA, but I can say this is that they are moving in a direction actually where they have an internal AI system that they allow us to use for certain workflow and different things like that. My hope is, though, and I'm pretty sure that this is what they're going to do, and it's to your point, Coach, which is consistently monitor and figure out what the best uses of AI are, because we don't want to we want to make sure that we still honor the human connection. Connecting with people is so important. So like AI could potentially, if we're not careful, further put us into silos. And that's not just in the healthcare setting, that's in any business. It could push us further into silos if we're in silos. And so I think you would have to weigh efficiency and time management and silos, because being connected with the other people in those other departments and having those relationships also can help streamline processes in a way that AI could never do. So like as a social worker, me having a relationship with the nurse manager and understanding her pain points in community care, the actual human factor that's involved in it, and knowing ways to improve processes by meeting with them, that can never go. We can't devalue that, because again, we work in a field where we're working with people, and so at the end of the day, if we're not having huddles and we're not having multidisciplinary team meetings, and we try to use AI to try to bridge that, probably won't be as effective. Now, there's ways that we can use it for planning, like planning events, writing, helping. I use it as a way to help with emails, and I'm going to be transparent here. So like, all of us are human beings, and sometimes we get a little passionate about the work that we do. And I'm not the leader that likes going back and forth in teams and in emails. I'm just not that guy. I don't do that. And so in order for me to, to help me with that, I've been using AI to respond to crucial conversations. So I can go into AI and say everything I feel and think. And then to your point, Coach, and I still want to learn this, is the prompting engineering. I haven't perfected it, but that prompt that I put into that AI generator to respond to that crucial conversation email it will make the difference between me wasting time and energy and effort responding to a string of emails of people going back and forth because their egos are involved. So AI, I can literally put in there, I can write, please make this sound professional because I'm writing to the executive leadership team, right? And it's gonna know that who those people are in the hospital system as far as administrators and their role and my role, and then it's gonna send out a prompt that takes out the emotion of my response, if that makes sense. And
Yes.
so for me, that's helped me with time management. I'll be honest with you, because there's been times where I would sit there for like 30 minutes making sure that my language and my tone and cadence was right in the way that I was responding to an email or an IM. And it's helped me tremendously in that way. And so I'm excited to see like what other ways we can use it in similar ways, so that way, it's almost like it's editing software, if that makes sense.
Yes.
That's how I use it, at least.
Yes. So AI aside, yes, it can be a good tool if used properly. Is everyone using it? Many people are. It's becoming more and more valid in the workforce today. Just do not forget that there is a human factor to everything, and everyone listening to this podcast right now just needs to remember that. There's the idea that, I know people who have entire coaching programs and stuff like that built around AI, and they build a GPT or something that whenever a client asks them a question, they throw it into AI, and AI helps them with the solutions. And if that's the way you're using AI in your business as a complete solution to everything, which is not what Derek's doing. He has a message that he's conveying in his emails. That's a great way to do it because it generates ideas and it takes your message and it puts it in a way that's easy to understand for the other reader. But do not use it as the only thing that, I mean, you still have to be the authority in what you do. Mm-hmm. AI is not the authority. That's kind of where I'm going to leave that. And anyone can interpret that the way they want to interpret that. But if you're not the authority and you're trying to use AI to make you sound like the authority, then you probably need to do some professional development. Done.
And with that being said, you have to open up your schedule and time management in order to do professional development.
That's what I was going to say. But back to time management. I'm going to be bold.
Well said, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to be bold in saying that, if people try to get on your schedule and your response is always, "No, I don't have time." And then the next time they ask, you say, "I don't have time." And then the next time they ask, you say, "I don't have time." If it's important to you, you make time. For example, I'm just going to use a home example because it always works. If you're married and your wife comes up to you and says, "We have to go on vacation this year," and you know that you have no time for a vacation. What mama wants, mama gets. So you make time for that because, if the dynamic in the house is that you want things to be as frictionless as possible and you want to support each other, then that vacation is going to happen. At work, you should treat it the same way. I mean, it's business, it's different, but it's still the same. If it's important, you make time for it. The excuse that you don't have time can only stretch so far before you start having people look at you as somebody who does nothing but make excuses, and that falls under ownership. So figure out why you don't have time. Is it you don't have time because you don't want to deal with that person? Do you not have time because your schedule's full? And if your schedule's so full, why? Still figure out how you can support that person. But Derek, you were getting ready to say something. I saw you put your finger up.
Yes, I got to jump in just a little bit because you said if it's important, they make time, which suggests that if you're asking someone to do something and they tell you they don't have time, are they then communicating to you that what you're saying to them isn't important to them?
Exactly.
That's not important to me. So it's interesting because, and I'm going to say this, like I work in suicide prevention and I get that response from people without them even saying that though.
Oh, so yeah.
There's people because of the work I do, because it's the hot potato, if you will, that the difficult conversation or the work that nobody really wants to do, but everybody has something to say about, right? Everyone has something to say about the number of veterans and service members that are dying by suicide. Everybody passionately wants to hold individuals accountable, organizations accountable. They have all the energy in the world to do that. But when you come to that same group of people in a community and you give them the opportunity and you even frame it in a way that makes it easy for them to actually prevent suicide, guess what? Everyone's quiet. Their silence says, "I don't have time for that. That's not important to me." Well, I just gave you a practical example. You're a fisherman. You like going fishing. There's veterans who, if you were to take them on a fishing trip once a month, that would be preventing suicide because that would promote connectedness. Gamers, you're a gamer. So if you had a gaming community, if you specifically created one for veterans, invited them into that community, that time and space that they're in that community, you would be preventing suicide. And I'm making that example because that's the work that I do, but it's a great example of the human condition and how people say they don't have time because they're simply saying, "That's not important to me." And so even like, but this is the thing. When we're talking about working for an organization, to your point earlier, you don't get to say that's not important to you. That's where I definitely 100% agree with you, and I want you to really we really got to hone in on this. And maybe I'm gonna go back and look at some of your leadership calls, because I know you talk about this, but it's in those moments where, and you said this, which is, if it's not important to them, as the leader, is it my responsibility to show them why this is important to them? Because I think sometimes on the surface, and I want to be gracious, right? I'm learning how to be more gracious in my big age, right? As I get 40, I'm learning that, okay, that person might really be afraid of this topic. And I'm going back to my job, suicide prevention. Like, and their fear is valid. I don't want to invalidate a worker's fear or a professional's fear of stepping in such a difficult topic. So for me, as the leader and coach, I want you to give me some feedback. I think it's then my responsibility to teach them why it is important to them, especially if they're afraid.
Yeah. Well, first of all, fear is usually something that holds us back. So yeah. I think in this situation, maybe it's not the level of importance. It's probably the unwillingness to have a certain type of conversation in a lot of cases, especially when it comes to suicide prevention. And you know, people have to get their mind right if they're going to be working in the suicide prevention space, because right now, what a lot of veterans suffer with is thinking that the VA does not care. And if they're too busy, and that's what they project, whether they say it or not, because they call in with an issue and can't get an appointment for 2 weeks, and they need to see a counselor, then what that's portraying to the veteran is that their issue is not important enough. And
right.
and when we're a veteran, that unfortunately our mind goes straight to, well, obviously the VA doesn't care.
Right. And that's very powerful, because what you just said, because when you said, because we could take that to any organization, right? You automatically assume the McDonald's worker doesn't care because of their disposition and the way that they're treating you or looking at you, or the way the car salesman statement was off-putting. I can see, I'm making the connection with you, how this idea of unimportant is also communicating care and concern.
Correct.
So like, but what's interesting and very powerful is that, what if it is, and I'm speaking from being on both sides in my organization. I'm a veteran when I'm working there, but then I'm also a worker, and I've done these trainings with our new staff members. And honestly, the reason why most staff members are having a hard time bringing up this topic is because they are afraid of saying the wrong thing. And so it's not that they don't care. And so for me, as the peacemaker, as the conduit, it is navigating and having, to be honest, you know, we're talking about time management, but obviously it's coming down to what's the barriers and what's stopping people from doing the work that they want to do. And it's interesting how we did this root cause analysis, and it's coming down to human emotion and just, again, that comes back to that connection piece. And so that's why, for me, I love going into communities and just talking about the topic. I think it can't, like, and if this could go with anything, it's not just about suicide prevention. I think that if we want people to get over that emotion and that fear or whatever emotion it is, to actually change their life and have better time management, I think we have to be willing to spend a little bit of time educating them and bringing awareness. Because I say this in therapy all the time, and I learned this from a concept called wise mind. And you have these two Venn diagrams, and when we go all the way over to the side of emotion, and we're really afraid to step into a certain uncomfortable conversation, or we're unwilling to be in certain kind of spaces, it takes reason and logic, which is on the right side, to move people over to the center of balance. And so for me as a leader, I always want to train and teach, always be training and teaching, coaching. I'm going to say this, you really, meeting you, 3 or 4 years ago, you've been teaching me that and modeling that for me as a coach, and just being aware of that. And it's so powerful because I just recently had an interview for a position, and that question was the first question they asked me. They asked me about my ability to teach. And that's so important because as I begin to teach those people, I believe that it communicates care and concern to them. And if I communicate care and concern to my 5-line staff, right, then my team, every time they answer a call on the crisis line, they're going to communicate that same care and concern to that veteran. But where it gets even more powerful, and what I'm excited about, if given this opportunity, is that my 5 workers will also be embedded and working with other teams, because I have a bunch of projects that I want to do. And so it's like those 5 people, if they start then connecting with other managers and other programs, and they have that culture of safety and psychological safety, more importantly, then that change will start happening. They will have more time, and then it'll spread to other departments, man. And that's what I'm excited about. And that's really idealistic. And I know, we talk about changing culture all the time and all these other things, and trying to really get stuff done. But it's interesting how I could, in my mind's eye, actually see this playing out, and I can see the team members who are going to be on board, and I can see the ones who may be a little resistant. Because as you work with people, man, and I think this may be a good segue. Is like, it is what role does personality type play in, like, this whole engagement of I'm engaging you on this idea of time management, change management. What role does personality and knowing that person, how does that play into how I'm going to connect with them and actually get some buy-in from them?
Oh man, it means everything. I mean, if you can't listen and ask questions as a leader, you're going to fall on your face quickly. And by the way, you're not really a leader if you can't do those things. The only way to get to know somebody truly is to show empathy, to ask questions, to listen, and respond to what they say. And the suicide prevention world, my gosh, they do trainings on this in the military all the time. They have the ACE program in the Army, and that's Ask, Care, Escort. Obviously, you can't escort somebody when you're on the crisis line, but what you can do is you can take action for them. And so I guess you could make it ACT. You can call it ACT if you want to, but you ask the questions. Mm-hmm. You show concern, and then you get those people help. If you don't get those people help on the spot, it's not going to happen. But a big part of that is not always talking. It's listening. And so I mean, we were born with 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. It's because we're supposed to listen more than we talk. And if you're not listening more than you talk, then you're going to miss so much. There's a lot to be said by other people. And when they know that they have somebody who's going to actually have true concern and listen to them, and they have a sounding board, then you might have just created a best friend in 5 minutes.
You better write that down. That's a book title. Best friend in 5 minutes, man.
Best friend in 5 minutes. No, but I'm serious. But I'm serious.
I know you are. You're right.
If you don't take the time to listen to people, then and actually us veterans, when we are caught in our own head already, we don't want somebody to tell us what to do.
Oh.
We want somebody to listen to us. And I'm going to be bold here because I'm a veteran myself. When somebody starts telling us what we can do, I want to fucking tell them where they can go. I want somebody to listen to me.
So I hear you. So let me ask you a question.
Yes.
And then when you're in those moments, are you angry?
Of course I am.
Okay.
But when we're stuck in our head, we're not calling the crisis line because we're in a good place. Right.
And I agree with you 100% in answering those calls. And and this is just the fact. If you're in a crisis, it almost is likely that crisis and anger are synonymous with each other. We can
Yes.
assume that the person is likely angry, right? And again, that's for me. Immediately, I go to my saying, which is when anger is high, cognition is low. And so, for me, I've been in crisis and my cognition goes out the window, and I want to normalize this, and this is where I want to bridge. I want to bridge it for so that way veterans see themselves as human and not something other than a human. The reality is that any human being, when their anger is high, their cognition is low. They might
Yes.
not, they might be able to, the difference between them, between people and veterans is that I think most veterans may or may not care about how that anger comes out. Like, I'm just being real. I mean, I'm a part of the community. I'm not going to sit here and act oblivious. Like, I'm far from it. Like, I get it. Like, at moments, I felt like, I'm going to make you hear me. That's not even a feeling. That's a thought. I have literally, as a veteran, had to catch myself being entitled to make you listen to me. And the truth is that that could be a part of the problem. But I think that's also not unique to veterans. I think that's a personality type. I think there's certain people that are outside of the veteran community, and unfortunately, we could even go deeper than that and say, males in general. I think sometimes when we want to be heard, we're going to demand you hear what I have to say. You're going to hear me right now, and I'm not going to wait. And so part of that's still an opportunity, though. I would say it's an opportunity. If you find that that's what's going on with you or whoever you are, it's like, let me take a step back because I also need to listen because I could be missing something. Yes, I want to be heard, but what if this was the case? Think about this. And I'm guilty of this. I've done this before. I've been running my mouth so much that the thing that I was complaining and running my mouth about, they actually had the answer. But I was just ventilating. And I'm just being real with you. I can give you plenty of examples where I was like, dude, you almost talked yourself out of an opportunity. And in reality, that person now, and this is what I try to model and teach everybody I work with is that the reality is that everybody is not against you. Like just because somebody works in the system doesn't mean that person is against you. And so our brain sometimes it does that where it's like we look at some as a part and we say that that's a part of the whole. And in reality, it's just like, and I'm going to say this, you know how many times I've gotten my head ripped off by a veteran, and I'm a veteran, and I understand. Look, if no one understands what you're going through with your service connection not getting processed or getting denied, it's me. I went through a 20-year battle fighting with that. And so whenever a veteran, when they start off a conversation with me and they're in crisis and I hear the word service connection, I'm like, okay, strap on your seatbelts, Derek, because this is going to be a rough ride. It's like certain topics that come up, and one of them is money. When money comes up, you're like, okay, I got to get myself ready for this. And it's me realizing and being mature that, you know what, beyond this person's anger, this person is really probably feeling abandoned. They're feeling hurt. They're feeling rejected. And practically speaking, they could literally be dealing with things like food insecurity. They could have a lack of purpose because this money and this resource is somehow connected to that in some way, shape, or form. And like it goes, my point is that it goes so deep to where you as the person, you can't take that personal. When you understand that this is the issue this person has, and it doesn't have to be a veteran. If it's related to a basic resource, that person is going to be in fight or flight mode. And and this is where I think most people, and if I'm training young healthcare workers or anybody, and it doesn't matter who it is, if you're working with people, if you know somebody is frustrated around something, the worst thing you can do is become a part of their crisis. And I know we're veering off the topic, and maybe we need to talk about this in greater detail another time. But I think Coach, I just think it's so important because and we can loop this back to time management. Think about if we started about fear, we talked about this emotion. Think about how discouraging it would be for that worker that just got their head ripped off by somebody at SSI, someone at the Veterans Administration, how discouraging it is, because that person is actually a child of a veteran, and they got back into the field to give back to the father that they lost. And now the next day, they're sitting there at their desk questioning whether or not they're worthy or not. And then me as their supervisor has to remind them of their why. And I have to spend this time doing coaching and counseling because they've just got ripped to pieces by someone who was angry, and they just were not, that person was not competent. It had nothing to do with care. It had to do with incompetence. Does that make sense?
It does. And time management or not, what I will say is that when somebody is going through something hard, they need somebody to listen and ask the right questions. Questions are so important. Open-ended questions that will allow people the opportunity to really get what's going on out in the open. And that's in suicide management, that's in change management, that's in leading your people and counseling, that is in professional development when you're trying to help people understand a topic. It doesn't matter. I mean, wonderful leaders like John C. Maxwell, they write books about questions. I think his was Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. Those books exist, and they are so popular because asking questions, listening, and then either responding to what they say or asking more questions is more important than you trying to provide solutions. How many times have you provided a solution to a coworker or an employee that was just trying to use you as a sounding board, and they said to you, or your wife even, by the way, because I know I've had this happen, and their response is, I don't need you to fix me. I just need you to talk to me and listen to me.
That's good.
It happens that way.
No,
and so
right.
and no matter what situation you're in, if you're not trying to get to, if you're trying to help somebody improve in an area, we're men, so we want to fix things. I mean, that's why a lot of men have project cars in their garage, because we like to fix stuff. But subordinate whatever you're thinking and make it about the other person. We talk about meeting people where they are. Do it. And if you're not good at it, practice it. Get better and better and better. Have crucial conversations that require you to shut up and listen more, and then ask questions instead of give solutions. And I think in the suicide prevention space, solutions are not always important unless it's to take them by the hand and take them to somebody that can help them. But even then, it's not telling them that they have to do something. It's bringing the solution to them. That's the most important thing. But you're not going to know what they need. They may not need emergency crisis intervention. They just might need somebody to listen to them. And when you have an employee that has an issue, it's the same thing. A time management issue. I don't have time for this. I don't want to do this. Blah, 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 blah. This is too hard. I mean, all of these things are exactly the same in that if you're going to help somebody find a solution to their problem, not giving them the solution and asking questions to help them get to the root cause, that's coaching.
Yeah.
If you're teaching a class, you're providing solutions and tools. If you're coaching, you're helping that person understand how they can help themselves. When you're mentoring, you're following up and making sure they don't need additional assistance along the way. Sometimes that means providing solutions. Sometimes it's more coaching. But all of those things are important. That's why the military teaches that model. That's why I teach that model in my programs. It's because giving people solutions, shoving things in their face rarely works. Having conversations and helping them figure out what they need. And by the way, the solution usually comes out of their mouth, unless you have to teach them something new. That's gonna work better every single time because now they have a stake in the process.
I love that. love that, because then goes our conversation come back full circle now, because then and only then will that person have see that as important. And when they see it as important based on that, kind of looking at it as a logic model, then the next step is for them going to be moved towards actually putting it in their schedule and making it important. So like for me, I intentionally put things on my calendar that I want to lean into. So I literally reserve time in my calendar for leadership development, professional development, because that's within the scope of my work. I can't say, oh, I want to be a better leader when I know that they offer this opportunity. Even doing continuing education units, right? You can do administrative time to go on a 1 to 2 day conference to get that training. There's another tool that I use and I have been using for the last 10 years that has shaped my whole career, really, which is called an individual development plan. And to your point, I didn't do that on my own. I did that with the help of a coach and a mentor within the system. And so that, for as far as the like time management part of it, it's like just adding that in there and making that a part, making that important. Like even when the days where I'm like, man, you know what, this don't even matter. I have those days too. Like, look, man, it's like no matter what you do, nothing's ever gonna work out. You say that to yourself sometimes, but when you have that plan and you go back to it, and I know this is gonna build on later talks, when you intentionally write that in your schedule for that time, like for right now, I'm in this season of like, again, doing more delivering more trainings about certain topics, right? So in the morning, every morning, I have a block in my schedule to do research on those topics each day, because there's like 8 different sort of topics, major topics that I have to explore in order to have a whole like have a list of trainings that would be worthwhile. So that way, because this is what people have already asked for, to your point. And so here it is. I have to build upon that. But if I keep saying I don't have time, I'm never going to do the research. I'm never going to put the trainings together, because I'm going to keep saying I don't have time. And so what I did was is I put it in. I made it in chunks, and then I gave myself a deadline, a SMART goal, and said, hey, within this amount of time, I want to be able to finish and deliver these presentations by this time, by this quarter, which means now I have a solid timeline to work from. So now when it's in my schedule, I'm not feeling rushed to do it. And when I each day, if I go and do that research, now I can be proud of myself, because I moved 1% towards 1% closer towards 100% complete on that specific task.
That's a guideline. I told my soldiers throughout my whole career, and once I became in a program management role as a warrant officer, it was even more important that I followed that myself and had these conversations with young lieutenants, is that, no matter what you do, no matter how busy you are, you have to make an effort to get 1% better every day. And it doesn't matter what that is. And you have to make time for it, whether that's doing a little bit of meditation and getting yourself in the moment, or it's doing a little bit of professional development. If it's having those tough conversations and working that muscle, it doesn't really matter what it is. Get 1% better every day. I think that's super important. But this is.
I'm sorry. Can I share one more tool?
You can share it.
I just want to share one more tool. I know we're way over time today, but maybe it's we've been missing each other, man. But one more tool. This is really a really powerful tool. I believe it was from John Maxwell as well. It's I don't know what he calls it, but it's like a prioritization tool, basically, where and I call it the like prioritization tool matrix or something like that. But basically, you have these four. You have and I'll draw a picture of it real quick, because that's probably easier to show you than I can explain it. So you have these like this line here, these quadrants, right? And this top quadrant over here, this is where it's most important and urgent, right? And in this quadrant here, you try to in the most important quadrant, urgent quadrant here, there may be stuff over here that's important but not urgent, and you start, and then down here you have unimportant or unurgent, and then so on and so forth. The goal is to focus on the things in this first quadrant first, get those things done, and then over here the things that are important but not urgent. These things are like 3-6 months down the road. I can then, once I start handling these tasks, and then the tasks down here at the bottom, at the very bottom, they're not urgent, not important. They're out of my, I don't think about those things. I'm only thinking about the things that are in these first two quadrants, but I'm only focusing on the present moment. These things are in the near future, but I start to move these things over as I start to check off the box over here. And that's a practical time management tool. And I'll be transparent. Using this tool helped me be successful in graduating from USC with my master's degree, because I had a moment where I was overwhelmed with all the reading, with all the writing. I was also working. I was dealing with life. And it was a point where, I almost felt like I wasn't gonna make it. I almost wanted to quit. There it is right there. At moments, man, I wanted to quit. And this counselor, she came and she gave me this tool, man. And she walked me through it with like all the priorities I had right there in front of me. And so after that, I continued to use this tool, and it's been extremely helpful, man. And it helped me overcome a mountain of papers and reading that I never thought I would be able to overcome. And just managing so many different competing priorities. And that's what it was about. And so, I think I wanted to share this because there are practical things where, like, if you don't budget your time right, if you don't pick the right priorities, that also can affect your time management as well.
Correct. So, systems and processes beat just winging it every day of the week. If you don't have a solution to your problems, then you're never going to solve them. And so that's great to provide those solutions. And although I talk a lot about how leadership is not rooted in systems and processes, it's rooted in people. If you don't have a solution, a system, a process, a way to deal with these things, then in the time that you need to figure something out, if you don't have a tool, you're going to leave yourself or somebody else hanging. So that's great that you provided that, because that is one way that you deal with time management. You have you figure out whether or not something's a priority, and that's that. I've seen that. I've used that. They actually teach that in the military as well. But as you get more and more senior, they throw all kinds of crap down your throat. But that's just me being honest. But this has been a really, really good conversation. I think time management is important. The conversation we're going to be getting to in 2 weeks is going to be discipline versus motivation, and why it's important to just do it anyway. I'm not gonna give anything away with that. I'm just gonna leave that there. And if you ask a question, I'll tell you to watch next time. No, but this is good. I think that though we went a little bit longer today, this is season 3, episode 1, so it's the pilot of our 3rd season. I think it's only necessary that we went into something that was important. It shows that we do have passions. It kind of lets people know where we stand on a lot of things, and moving forward, it's only going to get better. So I have nothing else. What you got?
Well, get those items done that you need to get done in your house today, because it's Saturday. So I know we got things we got to get done. Check off the boxes.
We have things we got to get done.
I got to get to a few myself.
And speaking of, I cannot leave this. By the way, if you stuck with us for 59 minutes and 20 seconds, there's still somebody that I see that's here. I appreciate you, but you're going to actually get to see my book that I'm trying to sell. So Speak Up, Show Up, Lead, a veteran story of grit, growth, and leadership from the ground up by me. This is my story, but the only reason my story is important and it doesn't make it any more important than anybody else's story. But I'm trying to inspire people to get off the couch and get back in the game. It doesn't matter what situation you're in now, what situation has been in your past. You can overcome those things, build resilience, and go out there and kick ass in this world. So this book is for the little guy. Or if you're stuck now, read it. It might motivate you to do something. Thanks, Dave. I really appreciate it. Thank you for... You're the one that stuck around. So I appreciate you for sitting with us for an hour. This was season 3, episode 1 of Warrior Leadership. And our next episode is going to be in 2 weeks on the 21st. And we are going to be talking about discipline versus motivation. And by the way, how discipline wins every damn time. We'll see y'all next time.
All right.